Shalawam. This is Hadassah Batsai 1, returning with Yahawah's calendar according to the book of Chanawach, who we know as Enoch. I know that our calendar has been a source of debate, the source of debate amongst our brethren, because many people, they either want to worship according to the Gregorian calendar, which is the pagan calendar, or they go towards the Hebrew calendar, which is still pagan, by the way, still Gregorian, or they follow a lunar calendar. So what we're going to look at, we're going to look at what Chanawach says about our calendar, and we're going to learn to calculate according to his description, okay? And that way it should put to bed any questions we may have concerning the calendar. Part 2, we're going to look at the sun, and part 3, we're going to pull it all together, and we're going to have the calendar for the next few months, okay? But we're going to get started with the moon first. I think that's more that is the basis for a lot of error, is the moon, because people don't know what the new moon is versus the full moon. All right. So we're going to look at Chanawach's description, and then we are going to discern what it is that he's teaching us. All right. Now, the book of Chanawach is an extraordinary book which helps to fill in some of the gaps of missing history in the Bible. It also helps us to understand the differences between the true calendar of Allah Hayam and the Gregorian calendar. This study will take a look at Chanawach's description of the luminaries, speaking of the sun and the moon, to help us to calculate the true calendar of Allah Hayam. Now, because we are currently under the Gregorian calendar, we have lost our path of years. So we have to do the mathematics. And Chanawach has given us a lot of clues to help us to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We just need to discern correctly what those clues are. Many people today are confused about the new moon versus the full moon, which, if its definition is not made clear and understood, will lead many down the wrong path to pagan worship. So if you're calling the new moon a full moon, then you will start your calendar at the wrong time. You'll be starting it in the middle of the month. All right? We'll see exactly what I'm speaking of as we go on. We will warn that in the last days, many of our brethren will make this error of calling a holy day an unholy day, and an unholy day a holy day. And this was something that our forefathers did even before they left the land. All right? Before they left Yashwa'al. They were already messing with the calendar that Yahweh had given them. And now look at what has happened to us. That was part of the reason why he scattered us. Because when they interfered with the calendar, it caused everything to fall out of place. All the feast days, the Shabbat, everything to fall out of place. And instead of worshiping on a holy day, they were worshiping on holy days. And then they were calling on holy days the holy days. All right? And calling holy days on holy days. When our forefathers were taken in slavery, they were indoctrinated into pagan worship, including worshiping on the day of the sun, which is Sunday. So this was our punishment. You mess with his calendar, now you're going to have to live under the Gregorian calendar. You're going to have to live under the Gentile calendar. All right? And that was just part of the many things that our forefathers did to anger Allah Hayam. Now today, because of the changes to time, our calendar too was changed as prophesied, brought about by the Gentiles. But you see, back in those days with our forefathers, before they were scattered from our land, We still had the prophets, and we still had people that followed the true calendar, so we were able to get back to the true calendar. But once we left our land, we lost everything. All right? And this was intentional too by Allah, because he said, listen, I give you a land that was good. You didn't have to you didn't have to plant anything, you didn't have to build anything. I give you laws and commandments, statutes and judgments. And you said, yes, you are going to hold fast to my commands. But you broke them. You played the harlot. And then when I sent my prophets to correct you, you killed them. So what else was he left to do but to scatter us from our land? The perfect flow of Yahawah's calendar had been disturbed long before by our rebellious forefathers, and as a result caused them and us today to fall into the hands of the Gentiles and under their calendar. And that's where we are today, under the Gregorian calendar, the pagan calendar of the Gentiles. Let's look at what Allah said to Masha in the book of YAHAWAH'S, which is the book of Jubilees, chapter 6, verse 30. All the days of the commandment will be 52 weeks of days, and these will make the entire year complete. Thus it is engraved and ordained on the heavenly tablets, and there is no neglecting this commandment for a single year from year to year. Command you, Habani ol Yasha'al, that they observe the years according to this counting, 364 days, and these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feast, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. So already, when Masha was up the mountain, Mount Sinai, for 40 days and 40 nights, Yahweh was instructing him that these were the things that our forefathers were going to do. And he warned them, do not stray from my calendar. Don't change anything. It was at this point of time that Masha was handed the correct counting of the years, days and months, months and days, months, weeks and days. The correct counting for the Jubilees. So when he came down the mountain and he handed this information to Habani ol Yasha'al, the children of Yasha'al, they had the perfect calendar. All right? Verse 33. But if they neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, meaning the feast days, and the years will be dislodged from this order, and they will neglect their established rules. Our forefathers were warned, this is my inclusion here, our forefathers were warned not to change Allah-Hayam's calendar to be like the Gentiles around them. Otherwise, they will lose their path of years. And this is where we are today. Verse 34. And all Habani ol Yasha'al will forget and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons and seasons and Ha-Shabbathawath, meaning the Sabbaths, and they will wrongly determine all the order of the years. That's exactly where we are today. We don't know what the correct year is. They're saying that it's the year that we're in right now is 2024, right? But that's not the correct year. But we're closer to the 6,000th year. We're coming up to 6,000th year, right? That much I do know. We're in the last Jubilee. past the halfway point and heading fast for the 6,000th year. But we are not going to be here when that happens. All right? We'll be long gone. Verse 35. For I know from no one will I declare it to you, and it is not of my own devising, for the book lies written in the presence of me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained. Or they forget the feast of the covenant and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles, after their error and after their ignorance. So thankfully, the Most High is keeping count. All right? Because we're going to need our brethren, the northern kingdom, they're going to need this information. We will be in glory. We'll be in third heaven with him. So we're not going to need the calculation of the years, so to speak. We'll be living in eternity. And soon, when our northern kingdom brethren makes it into our land and things start to unraveled for the world and develop for us, right? Soon they too will be dwelling in eternity. All right? And like I've said in my studies before in the book of Revelation, once the 1,000-year reign begins, the way how we will know when each year, quote unquote, passes by, because there'll be no more time, will be the feast days that we will celebrate yearly, the yearly feast days that we will celebrate. Speaking specifically of the Feast of Tabernacles. All right. Verse 36. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon and how it disturbs the seasons and come in from year to year 10 days too soon. So this is the reason why we cannot follow a lunar calendar. We cannot depend on the moon to make our calendar. Verse 37. For this reason the years will come upon them when they disturb the order and make an abominable day, the day of testimony, which is the Shabbat, and an unclean day, a feast day. And they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go around as to the months and Shabbathawath and feast and jubilees. For this reason I command and testify to them, for after your death your children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only, and for this reason they will go around as to the new moons and seasons and Shabbathawath, meaning Sabbaths, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. So you see, this is the problem with rebellion. You can't rebel a little. Once you start on the path of rebellion, it increases until you self-destruct. So they start off by changing the length of his year. Instead of 364 days, change it to whatever the Gentiles around them are using for their calendar. Then they went round with the new moons, the festivals. Of course, they'll be celebrating pagan festivals. And they went round with the Shabbathawath. Because once you change the year from 364 days, everything is going to shift out of place. And of course, they're going to incorporate some Gentile stuff in there too. And so they go another step further, eating all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh, eating unclean animals, and eating blood. You know, like how some people go to the restaurant and say, well, I want my steak to be rare, meaning that it still has some moo left in it. When you slice it open, blood pours out of it. We're told not to eat our meat like that. We can eat beef, but it has to be well done. That's eating blood. And that's what happened with our forefathers. They go astray a little, but they don't stay astray just a little bit. They keep going farther and farther and farther away from the commands of Allah. The very first thing that we must be aware of is the difference between the time that Allah had established on the earth and how his time was changed. So we originally changed his time. That's why he said to Masha, when you die, those same ones are going to disturb my time. All right? We currently live under the Gregorian calendar that is determined by the change of time. According to Allah's time, an hour was made up of 90 minutes, and a day was made up of 18 hours. A month was made up of 30 days each, but there were 4 months in a year that were 31 days. This gave the year the total of 364 days. Now, Allah calculated, I shouldn't say he calculated, but we can calculate these days according to the sun, but we cannot calculate these days according to the moon. All right? Today, under the Gregorian calendar, an hour is made up of 60 minutes, not 90 minutes, 60 minutes. And a day is made up of 24 hours, not 18 hours. Now, you might think 18 hours is less than 24, so maybe, it can balance out itself like that. No, do the math, and you'll see that we lose time. We have lost a lot of time because of this Gregorian calendar. A month is made up of 28 or 29 days, 30 or 31 days. Not just 30 and 31, 28, 29, 30 and 31 days. Once every 4 years, the month of February changes from 28 days to 29 days, which affects the year, making it a leap year. A year is made up of 365 days, except the leap year, which comes every 4 years to be 366 days. What has happened over the course of many years is the loss of time. Therefore, the year today is not the correct year. We have lost time, which is still being kept accordingly in the heavenly tablets. So everything is recorded in heaven. So we're not going to be too distraught over this, because Allah knows the correct time for us. He lives in eternity, we live in time. But the problem for us is we need to know the correct calendar so that we can worship him on his correct day for his Shabbat and for his feast days. All right? Let's look at YAHAWAH'S chapter 1, verse 9. They will forget all my commandments, even all that I command them, and they will walk in the ways of the Gentiles and after their uncleanness and after their shame, and will serve their gods. And these will prove to them an offense and a tribulation and a sickness and a trap. Many will perish, and they will be taken captive and will fall into the hands of the enemy, because they have forsaken my laws and my commandments, and the festivals of my covenant, and my Shabbathawath, and my holy place which I have kept holy for myself in their presence, and my tabernacle, and my sanctuary, which I have kept holy for myself in the midst of the land, that I should set my name on it, that I should reside there. Now I know we have some brethren out there that they're teaching others that we don't need to keep Shabbat or any of the feast days because we're not in our land. Now, he never told us to stop keeping the feast days. No, he did not. He said, I will be to you like a little sanctuary. So even though we don't have the actual sanctuary, Hamashiach has become our sanctuary, our tabernacle not made with hands. He gave us Rawach HaQadash to help us to find our path. Okay? The path of years and the path of righteousness. We will make mistakes because I have been working on this calendar for a very long time. And I'm sure that I've worshiped him on holy days. But you know, this is where grace comes in. This is one thing that he has taught me about grace. He understood that this was going to happen to us. You see, our forefathers, even though they went astray from the path of years, there was always still someone there to keep track. A prophet or a minister or someone keeping track. They had records that were not contaminated. We today, what do we have? Everything that we have is contaminated. That's why Hamashiach, when he left the earth, he released Rawach HaQadash to help us along this path, to find the path of years. We may not know the exact year that we're in, but we can still glean enough to figure out the calendar from month to month. And if you made a mistake this month, then he'll guide you back to the drawing table, so to speak, to get working at it again, like he has done with me. Has he held it against me? No, he did not, because he knows I don't know the correct calendar. I am learning what that calendar is. And to be honest with you, the book of CHANAWACH, starting from chapter 72 and onward, can get a little bit much. It's heavy reading. There's a lot to decipher. You got to break it up in bite-sized pieces. All right? Because we're trying to move away from the Gregorian calendar, which we have been born under, to learn a new calendar, a new way of life. And this is where grace comes in. Grace allows us to make the mistakes, and still at the same time, when he brings the correction, we accept the correction, we ask for forgiveness, and he immediately forgives us. That's grace. That he does not get angry with us because we have done something wrong, because we're trapped. We're still enslaved. We may be walking around free, but we're still slaves. As long as we are not in our land, we will never be free, and we will always be slaves. All right? And we're trying to gather as much information as we can so that we can walk the straight and narrow way that he wants us to walk in. He wants us to walk in his laws, his commandments, his statutes, and his judgments. We're learning what those are for the first time. So he's not going to punish us if we make a mistake today, because he knows they want to learn. They want to know what the truth is, and they're going to keep seeking after me for it, and I will guide them to it. All right? Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. I've read some of our brethren. They read Amos chapter 8, verse 9, and because of what Amos said, that they decided not to celebrate any more feast days. But that's taking scripture out of context. Just one line has caused them to toss away the feast days and not to keep it as an observance. Right? He said to observe these days. We cannot do the things that our forefathers did. First of all, we don't even know what they did on these days. We don't need to sacrifice any animals. All right? But we still need to keep them as holy days. No working, no doing your own pledges on those days. All right? And when he sees that we are trying to be diligent, then his grace covers us because he knows, okay, they're learning. They're like little babies trying to walk. All right? They're going to fall down just like little children. They're going to fall down, and I'm there to pick them up, dust them off, and set them back on the path. This is all new. All right? Everything that we're now learning is all new. Our calendar is new to us. All right? So don't get thrown off the path because of a verse in the scripture or by what other people are saying. Keep working at it. Keep working at it. You know, when I was doing this, because I've done so many of these videos, this particular calendar, been working on it for quite some time. But I was never satisfied with how it was flowing. So I just could not release it. I just deleted. Went back to the drawing board, went back to him and asked him, okay, why is it not flowing the way how, I could feel it in my spirit, right? Because there's always more that he wants me to add. And when there's more, he's like, okay, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. I'm thinking that it's ready. He's like, it's not ready yet. One thing that he showed me that really helped me to understand is the parable about the talents, how the rich ruler gave 5 talents to one man, 3 to another man, and 1 talent to the other man. The man with the 5 talents invested his 5 talents and he made 10. The one that had 3 talents invested his and he made 6. He doubled. So what they have done, they had doubled what was given to them. The man with the 1 talent, the lazy one, decided, I'm just going to go and hide it, because if I invest in it, I might lose it. And then what? But it wasn't that he was thinking that he could lose it. It's just that he just couldn't be bothered. Maybe he used that as an excuse so that he didn't have to do anything with it, so that at least he still had something to show for what was given to him. So when the master came back, the one with the 5 came with his 10, and the master was pleased. All right, same thing with the one who he had given 3 talents to, came back with 6. But the one man that was given the 1 talent came back with just 1. He should have had 2. And he said, well, hey, I know that you're a hard man. I didn't want to displease you by losing what you've given to me. And what did the master say to him? And I'm paraphrasing here throughout, right? He said, you are a lazy servant. And what did he do with him? Cast him out. Cast him out. Out of the kingdom. Now, this is a parable, because what Hamashiach wants us to understand, the little that he has given to us, he expects returns on that little. Doesn't matter if it's 5, 3, or 1. You work diligently to get a return. So that means you have to invest time, energy, prayer, fasting, what have you. You invest so that you get a return. And when he sees that you're diligent in investing yourself in whatever he has given to you, then he will bless you. You will see returns. But if you become lazy, a sluggard, and you decide, hey, you know what? He's given me this knowledge, and I'm just going to lay it here on the table or go put it in a drawer somewhere and leave it there. I'm not going to do anything with it because we were born in slavery. We don't know our time. We don't know the time. We don't know the calendar. We don't know our language. Don't know our culture. I'm just going to save the little that I do know, the fact that I am of Yashraal, that much I do know, and wait until we get into the wilderness. And there he will tell us all the things that we need to know. So I just save that. I'm going to carry on living the way how I'm supposed to be living, working and sending my children to school and doing this and doing that. But I'm going to preserve the fact that I'm Yashraal and save that knowledge until we get into the wilderness. I'm not going to search out our language. I'm not going to search out the true calendar. I'm not going to even bother about um, celebrating the feast days or the Shabbat because we don't know for sure what those things are. So until we know for sure, I'm just going to put that aside and carry on living. Did he not say occupy until he comes? Well, I'm doing just that. No, that's a lazy servant. And those kinds of people will be cast into the outer darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. He has no time for lazy people. You work at it and you keep working at it until you hit jackpot. All right? Let's see where I left off. Yes. Verse 11. They will make themselves high places and places of worship and graven images. Each will worship graven images of his own making. Thus they will go astray. They will sacrifice their children to demons and to all errors their hearts can work. I will send witnesses to them that I may testify against them, but they will not hear. They will kill the witnesses. They will persecute those who seek the law, and they will abolish and change everything so as to work evil before my eyes. So you see, our forefathers were already doing these things while still in our land. Verse 13. I will hide my face from them. I will deliver them into the hand of the Gentiles. They will be captured like prey for their eating. I will remove them from out of the land. I will scatter them among the Gentiles, and they will forget my law and all my commandments and all my judgments. They will go astray regarding the observance of the new moons and Shabbathawath and festivals and jubilees and laws. Exactly where we are today. Now I have here in red highlight the observance of new moons. So that means the new moon is significant to us. All right? Many of our books were destroyed. And what books that were not destroyed were hidden or changed. There are very few books left that we can still glean as much as possible. What was intentionally hidden from us. Sorry, let me read that again. There are very few books left that we can still glean as much as possible. What was intentionally hidden from us. And the book of Chanawach is one of those books. So we can still glean what the Gentile nations had come together and decided to hide from us our identity. All right? But today, we have gleaned, have we not? And through revelation, Rawach HaQadash has revealed to us our identity, our culture, our language. He's revealed a lot of things to us. He's opened up the books of prophecy in the Bible to give us an understanding about who we are, that we are the people of the book. All right? And this was what the wicked powers that be were afraid of. So what they had done over the generations is layered us with a lot of deception to keep us away from the truth. You see, they wanted to destroy everything. They wanted to destroy our language, but they couldn't. Allah would not allow them to destroy the heavenly language. So you know what they did? They camouflaged it and called it Hebrew. All right? They wanted to destroy all the books, but they couldn't. But the few that were left, like the Bible and the Apocrypha, they've contaminated. They've included the names of their gods. Well, they've changed the true name of Allah and Hamashiach and our forefathers, and they incorporated their own pagan gods in there. Same thing with the festivals, because you see Easter in the Bible. There's no such thing as Easter. It's Passover. So that's what they intended to do. But we have the book of CHANAWACH, right, which is going to help us with the calendar. But like the Bible, this book too has been contaminated. And like the Bible, we need Rawach HaQadash to help us to discern the truth hidden in this book. So like all things, even the Bible, we need to use discernment. We need to use wisdom. We need to use understanding. Okay? CHANAWACH helps us to define the new moon versus the full moon. It is very important to know this, as it will help us with the true calendar of Allah, or we will be led astray from the true calendar. So we have to understand what the new moon is versus the full moon. All right? So now we're going to go into the book of CHANAWACH, and I'm going to try to explain a few things in there, because there are a lot of words, right, describing what he had seen. So I'm going to try my best to explain to you. So first, CHANAWACH chapter 73, verse 1. And after this law, I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminary, which is named the moon. Now, smaller, not in the sense of size, but in the sense of its illumination, right? It's the lesser light. Verse 2. And her orbit is like the disk of heaven, and her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in measurement. So, her orbit, meaning her path that she travels over the earth, follows the disk of heaven, the curvature of the heaven. So if you look up above your heads, you're going to see that there's a curvature above you. It's called the dome or the firmament. And her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in measurement. And her rising and setting change every month, and her days are like the days of the sun. And when her light is uniformly, meaning completely full, it amounts to the 7th part of the light of the sun. So the first thing that we have to understand is that the moon is described in parts called sevenths. All right? So when the moon is full of light, it is equal to 1/7 of the light of the sun. So that means that the sun is 7 times brighter than the moon. Verse 4, and thus she rises, and her first phase in the east comes out on the 30th morning, and on that day she becomes visible and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day, together with the sun in the door where the sun rises. So the 30th morning, in regards to the sun now. So when it's the 30th morning of the sun, it is the time when the moon starts to wax in her light. So that means before she was a dark moon. So she begins to wax her light in the 30th morning of the sun's rising. She rises with the sun and she sets with the sun. And because she's a new moon, because now this is what you describe as a new moon, that first sliver, you can't see her. She's rising with the sun and setting with the sun. That's why we don't see her. All right? And that first sliver is so slight, you can't see her. What happens soon after that, she starts to drift away from the sun, meaning that the sun will rise first, half an hour later, then the moon starts to rise. So when the sun sets, the moon is now setting, then you start to see that sliver, because now the brightness of the sun does not hide the brightness of the moon. Okay? And that's usually the second or third day. All right? Verse 6, and one half of her goes out by a seventh part, and her whole disk is empty without light, with the exception of 1/7 part of it and the 14th part of her light. I know lots of words, but basically what Chanawach is saying, when she first comes out, she comes out half of 1/7, because the moon, you actually see the changes of the moon in her light when she's in her sevenths. So when she's 1/7, that's when you see her first sliver. All right? It's evident. It's evident because she's shining brighter, the sliver is bigger, and the sun is already set, and she's now getting ready to set behind the sun. So the sky is a little darkened, and so you see the first sliver. All right? The 1/7 part, because the moon is described in sevenths, she grows in her light in half of those sevenths. So half of 1/7 is 1/14. And that's why it takes 14 days for her light to become full, to become a full moon, because she grows by 1/14 of her light. By the time she gets to 1/7, that's when your eye can visibly see her light. Verse 6, and when she receives 1/7 part of the half of her light, meaning 1/14 of her light amounts to 1/7 part and the half thereof. So it amounts to 1/14. There's a lot of words to just say that her light is now 1/14 when she first rises up with the sun. And she sets with the sun. And when the sun rises, the moon rises with him and receives the half of one part of light. And in that night, and in the beginning of her morning, in the beginning of the lunar day, the moon sets with the sun and is invisible that night with the 14 parts. And I have here 13.5 parts. All right. So she still remains invisible at 1/14. That's what I'm saying, because she's rising and setting with the sun. So the brightness of the sun will overshadow or will blur out her light. So you can't see that first sliver. Impossible. Right? So when she sets, it's almost like she's invisible. And when she sets, she's at 13.5 parts invisible. All right? And the half of one of them, 1/14, visible. And she rises on that day with exactly a 7th, meaning a 14th part, and comes out and recedes from the rising of the sun, and in her remaining days, she becomes bright in the remaining 13 parts. All right, so when she starts to recede, that's when she becomes 1/7. All right, which is 2/14. The moon becomes visible because she is waxing in her light from being a dark moon. So in order for her to have a sliver, that means she was a dark moon, completely empty of light. So that sliver now, meaning now she's becoming a new moon. New moon means new light. All right, she's now growing in new light. Let me read that over again. The moon becomes visible because she is waxing in her light from being a dark moon. And this begins at the ending of the sun's month, hence the expression 30th morning. Now, before we move on, there are some things that we must realize about the moon. The moon is feminine. She receives her light from the sun, which is masculine. The moon can be seen visibly growing in her light only when she is in seventh parts of light and not quarters as we were taught in science at school. So they talk about first quarter, half moon, third quarter, full moon. No, the sun grows in sevenths. Okay, so now let's look at First Chanawach chapter 78, verse 3. These are the two great luminaries. Their discs are like the disc of the heaven, and the size of the disc of both is alike. So the disc, meaning the size of the moon and the size of the sun, they're called disc, right? That means that they're flat. They're not like a ball. All right. They are alike in size, meaning that the sun is not bigger than the moon and the moon is not small. They're both the same size, and they both sit beneath the dome. All right. The verse 4. In the disk of the sun, there are 7 portions of light which are added to it more than to the moon. And in fixed measurements, it is transferred until the 7th portion of the sun is exhausted. And they set and enter the doors of the west, and make their revolution by the north, and come out through the eastern doors on the face of heaven. So when we get to the sun, we're going to see the description that Chanawach gives us about these doors. Doors in the east and doors in the west. They're portals through which the luminaries, including the stars, they come through, follow the arc of the curvature of the firmament, and they go through. That's what we call setting. When they're setting, they have actually gone through the western gate or the western doors. They go under the earth and they make a revolution then to come up towards the east to enter through the eastern doors. And they continue that revolution however long they want. We know that the sun is continuous and regular, whereas the moon is not. Okay? So they will continue this path until the end of time, until Yahawah says there will be no more sun, moon, or stars, and he just destroys them. So this is what they do. All right? Now, let's talk about north. I know we have direction, north, south, east, and west, and we tend to look at compass north as, opposite from south, right? Well, north here seems to be underneath the earth. So this is not compass north. And if you don't believe me, there's an app that's called Skylight, and it's free. If you get the light version, it's free. And you can track the sun, moon, and stars all around the earth. And even when the sun has gone down and the moon has gone down, you can still hold your smartphone parallel to the earth, and you will find that the sun, the moon, and the stars are under the earth. All right, you'll find their location, and you'll see, like, they will track where they're going to come up. All right, so science want to tell us that we are on a spinning ball revolving around the sun, and yet their app tells us something else completely different. That's the hilarious part of it all. Verse 11. During all the period during which the moon is growing in her light, she's transferring it to herself when opposite to the sun. During 14 days, her light is full in heaven, and when she's ablaze throughout, her light is full in heaven. And on the first day, she is called the new moon, for on that day the light rises on her. So now you understand what a new moon is. New moon is when the moon begins to wax in her light from a dark moon. She's completely empty. I call it a dark moon, right? She has no light, but then she starts to grow her light, and that becomes the new moon. She becomes full moon exactly on the day when the sun sets in the west, and from the east she rises at night, and the moon shines the whole night through until the sun rises over against her and the moon is seen over against the sun. So what he is saying here, you can tell the full moon when the sun rises and sets and the moon is now rising. The moon starts to rise when outside is dark, and so the moon, as she makes her orbit over the earth, she shines all the night because she's a full moon. This is the way how Allah Hayam designed it. He designed the moon when she becomes full of light, meaning the full moon, to shine upon the earth the entire night. So now she has completely separated herself from the sun. When the sun starts to rise, she's now setting. I've seen that happen. When you're living in a place like a city where there are lots of street lights and traffic lights and whatever, buildings with lights, it's hard to see the moon. Plus, the horizon is obscured with all these buildings, right? You need to be in a countryside where there are hardly any lights in order for you to understand this concept of the moon shining upon the earth. And when the moon shines and when she's full of light, she really shines brightly. All right? She's not as bright as the sun, but she shines brightly. Verse 14. On the side where the light of the moon comes out, there again she wanes until all the light vanishes and all the days of the month are at an end, and her disk is empty, void of light. Okay? So after she becomes a full moon, then she starts to wane. She starts to lose her light. All right? And you don't see her losing her light because, again, you only start to see her losing her light when she becomes 1/7 less of light. All right? So she'll be at 6/7, but she's losing her light in 1/14. Okay. Verse 17. And there's nothing else in her save her light. So I just took this portion out of verse 17 because I just want you to see that the light of the moon has no heat. It's just a light. First Chanawach, chapter 74, verse 1. And I saw another course, a law for her, and how according to that law she performs her monthly revolution. And all these Uriel, the holy angel who is the leader of them all, showed to me and their positions. And I wrote down their months as they were, and the appearance of their lights until 15 days were accomplished. In a single seventh parts, she accomplishes all her light in the east, and a single 7 parts accomplishes all her darkness in the west. So you see when I told you earlier that the moon is described in sevenths of light. All right? And in certain months, she alters her settings, and in certain months, she pursues her own peculiar course. And for this reason, we cannot follow the cycle of the moon to determine the length of our months. All right? The moon is there for a reason, and we're going to come across this very soon. Now, I know it says here 15 days are accomplished. You're wondering, like, I thought it was 14 days. Well, when the moon is losing her light, when she gets down to her last 1/14th light, she doesn't just lose 1/14th, she loses half of that, which is 1/28th, right? She loses 1/28th, and then she completely goes black after that. So that would make up the 15th day. We see the difference between the full moon, which means that she is full of light, and the new moon, where she is empty of all light and new light is beginning to grow in her. It is for this reason why she is called a new moon, because it is new light that is waxing. Once we are able to see the first sliver, it is already at 1/7 part of light. Once she accomplishes all her light, it begins to wane until she's empty of light to start it all over again. The moon is not consistent with her revolutions around the earth as she waxes and wanes. Therefore, as she waxes and wanes, therefore we cannot depend on her for time and the length of our months. However, we look for the first visible sliver to know that we will be starting our new months. That first sliver tells us that our current month is coming to an end and a new month will begin. Once the required number of days for that month are fulfilled and not before. So this is where it gets a little bit not confusing, but why some of our brethren will just say forget it, we'll just continue on with the Gregorian calendar. Because you'll find that because we've lost our path and because time have changed. Remember, we were under 18 hours per day, 90 minutes per hour. But all that has changed. So because that has changed, it means that there's going to be some discrepancies when our months begin. But we cannot forfeit the length of our month because we have a new moon sliver. Okay? When we have the new moon sliver, it usually marks our month beginning about 1 to 2 days after, maybe even 3 days after. Okay? And we can't say, well, it's the new moon, so we have to start our month right after. No, we have to fulfill the 30 days or the 31 days, depending on the month. All right? We can't let the new moon sliver throw us off. It's only there as an indication. It's our way of knowing our month is coming to an end, our new month is beginning. Okay? I had to learn that the hard way. Yeah. because I'm trying to fit everything within what Chanawach is saying. And in doing that, I had to lose a few days in order to start our month on the correct, what I thought was the correct day. And then the Most High said, you're doing it wrong. In this case, then, you're not fulfilling the command of 30 days or 31 days for that matter. All right, and then the rest of your calculations are going to be off. Okay, so we can't let the first sliver be it's not written in stone. It is our indicator, okay? The sun, which we will look at in part 2, is very consistent for his rising and setting. Therefore, he is used to establish time. The minutes, the hours, the length of days, months, which are either 30 or 31 days, and a year, and years. The moon, however, is not that consistent as it has either 28, 29, or 30 days in our months, and follows her own peculiar cycle. So we can't follow her. We follow the sun. First Chanawach chapter 7 and 8, verse 9. And in certain months, the month has 29 days and wants 28 days. Now we drop down to verse 15. And 3 months she makes of 30 days. And at her time, she makes 3 months of 29 days each, in which she accomplishes her waning in the first period of time, and in the first though for 177 days. So we don't need to go into that too deeply. This is just to let you know, some months she has 29 days, then once she has 28 days, and then the other months she has 30 days. Okay? So we cannot follow the moon for our calendar. So now let's look at Bara'ah chapter 1, verse 14. And Al-Hayam said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs. And signs here means a wath, meaning remembrance, a warning, miracle proof. And for seasons, which is mawa'od, meaning appointed time, set feast, appointed places. So they're there for us as a warning, as remembrance, and for our feast days, and for days and years. Okay, so that's what the luminaries are there for. Verse 15, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And Al-Hayam made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And Al-Hayam set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from darkness. And Al-Hayam saw that it was good. Okay? There are many of our brethren who have been led astray to call an unholy day a holy day because they follow the Gregorian calendar. There are others who dismiss the new moon as our indicator for the ending, the beginning of our months, and use the full moon instead, which will also lead to error. As we look at the sun in the next study, we will see how to calculate the length of the months for our calendar using the numbered days and not the pagan names, and using the formula for each month according to Al-Hayam's instructions, which he gave to Chanawach. It will be then that we will see a pattern that is in accordance to Al-Hayam's command for his Shabbat. So you know the Shabbat is every 7th day. So you should see multiples of 7s in his calendar. But if you're using a calendar and his Shabbat is falling on day 11, you know you're not on the right calendar. It's either day 7, day 14, day 21, day 28. All right? Evening of the 13th the evening of the 6th to the evening of the 7th. The evening of the 13th to the evening of the 14th. The evening of the 20th day to the evening of the 21st day. the evening of the 27th day to the evening of the 28th day. That pattern has to be repeated in our calendar. Cannot be any other days. All right? First, Shama which is book of Samuel, chapter 20, verse 5. And Dawad said unto Yawanathan, which is Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat, meaning at a meal with the king. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field unto the third day at evening. So here, Dawad is saying to Yahawanathan, who is Jonathan, that's a mouthful, right? And he's describing the new moon. The new moon would have been the first sliver. And with the first sliver, we know that the moon is almost setting with the sun, or she's following the sun, and the earth is going to be dark the whole night through. Until about the third day, now, she's coming up brighter and sooner. Okay, because she's now getting ready to shine the whole night through on the land when she becomes full moon. So this should tell you that new moon cannot be full moon, because if you're hiding, you want to hide in darkness, don't you? You're not going to hide when there's light shining upon the earth. When there's a full moon in a field, you're going to see everything. All right? But with a new moon, because there's darkness, and that tiny sliver doesn't really show much, and is setting with the sun anyway, the earth is going to be in darkness. Second Malakayam, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 23. And he said, wherefore will you go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Shabbat. And she said, it shall be well. So this is the story about the Shulamite woman, and her son had died. Okay? And so she was going to inquire the man of Alahayam, who is the prophet, and this is her husband saying to her, so why are you going to him today? It's not the new moon or Shabbat. So there's something significant about the new moon because he's mentioning it. Okay? In the first verse with Dawad, we see that he's hiding in the field during the time of the new moon. If the new moon is when the moon is full of light, how was it possible for Dawad to hide in the field without being seen? The brightness of the moon will shine everywhere, making it impossible to hide, especially in a field. But if the new moon is darkness, then this is very possible. In the next verse with the Shunammite woman who was seeking help from Alayashao, who is Elisha, because her son was dead. Her husband has shed some light as to the importance of the new moon, as he equates it to Shabbat day, or HaYawam Shabbat. Yes, Yawam HaShabbat, sorry. He equates it to Shabbat day. So in the same sentence, in the same breath, he said to her, it is not new moon, and it's not Shabbat. So there's something significant about the new moon. Psalm 81, verse 3. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon, in the time appointed, on our solemn feast day. For this was a statute for Yashwa'al, and a law of Alahayam of Ya'okab. So now we have the psalmist calling for the trumpet to be blown in the new moon, in the time appointed, on our solemn feast day. Why is the prophet calling for the trumpet to be blown in the new moon? Because it established the beginning of our months in their quarters. Now remember, I said 4 times a year we have months that are 31 days. These are the new moon months that the prophet is referring to. This is the time appointed for the new moon to be observed after the quarter is completed. Now, we're not talking about the light of the moon, we're talking about the quarters of our months. All right. Each month is made up of 30 days, except 4 months, which are made up of 31 days. And we will see this in part 2 in detail. So let me explain to you. Say, for example, our first month is 30 days, is made up of 30 days. Second, 30 days. Third month, we're made up of 31 days. Fourth month, 30 days, 30 days, 31 days, 30 days, 30 days, 31 days. So you see the pattern. All right? These 4 months divided the year into quarters. All right? Occurring every third month, starting with the third month, 6th month, 9th month, and 12th month. So these months have 31 days. After these particular months are completed, then in the following month, the trumpet will be blown. And that would be in the first month, because the 12th month had 31 days. So when that month is completed, then the next month, which will be the first month, the trumpet will be blown. Same thing with the 4th month. It coincides with the 3rd month. It comes after the 3rd month, the 7th month, and the 10th month. This calendar is cyclical, so the first month will continue after the 12th month. So it continues on that cycle. All right. Now you're going to see this very clearly in part 2 when we look at the sun. These new moon feast days are not called for according to the celebration of Hashabbat. So we're not told to celebrate these new moon feast days like Hashabbat, but we can still hold them in observance. All right. They are memorials for us today. In our forefathers' day, they celebrated them as solemn feast days for what they represented to them. Plus, these feast days were handed down to them. But we today lost them like we lost everything else. They're not compulsory celebrations, and they're not holy convocations either. Okay? Yet it will not hurt us to observe them and note them on our calendar. Let's look at YAHAWAH'S, the book of Jubilees, chapter 6, verse 23. On the new moon of the first month, and on the new moon of the 4th month, and on the new moon of the 7th month, and on the new moon of the 10th month are the days of remembrance, and the days of the seasons in the four divisions of the year. They are written and ordained as a testimony forever. Enoch, who is Noah, ordained them for himself as feasts for the generations forever, so that they have become a memorial to him. On the new moon of the first month, he was told to make for himself an ark. And on that day, the earth was dry, and he saw from the open ark the earth. So, what the writer has done here is combine 2 events on the new moon of the first month. So the new moon of the first month, he made the ark for himself, and on the new moon of the first month, that's when the waters receded from off the earth. On the new moon of the 4th month, the mouths of the depths of the bottomless pit beneath were closed. On the new moon of the 7th month, all the mouths of the abysses of the earth were open, and the waters began to descend into them. On the new moon of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and Enoch was glad. Because of this, he ordained them for himself as feasts for a memorial forever, and thus are they ordained. So we understand why Enoch kept these feasts for himself, and he passed that on to his children. All right? and they passed it on to their children. But for us today, because we've lost everything, we've lost the significance of the new moon. But they were not holy convocations, they were just observance. They were just for us to observe their significance. All right? Verse 29. And they placed them on the heavenly tablets. Each had 13 weeks, from one to another, past their memorial, from the first to the second, and from the second to the third, and from the third to the fourth. Allah Hayam have given to us his solemn feast days, which are Ha-Shabbathawath, meaning the Sabbaths, in which we need to keep forever. Yet there are other feast days that we can celebrate, like Purim. And Purim is, we observe that because we were almost annihilated because of wicked Haman. The Feast of Dedication has to do with the Maccabean revolt against the Greek Empire. All right? And of course, the 4 new moons, which Enoch kept. Our forefathers kept these celebrations, as we can see from Psalm 18, verses 3 to 4, when the trumpet is called for the new moon on its time appointed. And once again, the psalmist is putting the new moon celebration in the same category as Ha-Shabbat to show its importance. Not that it was compulsory or it was a holy convocation. Yet once again, they are not compulsory for us to keep a solemn feast, as they are not listed as such in the Bible. We have to understand that due to the changes which the Gentiles made to create the Gregorian calendar have shifted our calendar days, causing days to have fallen out of Allah Hayam's perfect alignment. This is to be expected, as we do not have the path of the years as yet. It will be returned to us once we are regathered. In the meanwhile, we have to use the limited information that was given to us, using the dark moon to know that our months are coming to an end, and the new moon sliver to know that our new month will begin. It's the best that we can do under these circumstances while being in exile, with the grace of Allah Hayam sustaining us. All right? Now, when I say that the path of years will be returned to us, of course, it's our history. But we will no longer be under time when we are dwelling in the kingdom of Allah Hayam. There's no time in his kingdom because we're going up in the chariots. Okay? There's no time up there. But we will have a record of our history that we can reflect on. Right? We have been programmed for many generations to keep the unholy feast days. Now to keep YAHAWAH'S Shabbathawath will be a bit daunting, as we first need to figure out his calendar. Once we have crossed this threshold, then keeping the celebrations will become second nature. However, it is wise to post our calendar in the most visible place so not to forget. And I'm saying that from experience because we have been living under the Gregorian calendar all our lives. And then to switch onto another calendar, it can be a bit daunting and you will forget. Okay? So what Allah Hayam had instructed me to do is to put his calendar rather, in the most visible place that I will see it every day. And that way, and I highlight my Shabbat days so that I don't forget them. And I also highlight the feast days so I don't forget them either. Okay? It is tricky and it can be a little bit, daunting at first, but once you get into the rhythm of it, then it becomes second nature. All right? So that's the ending of part 1. I will be getting ready to do part 2, the sun, and that is not as complicated as the moon. The moon is peculiar. She's peculiar. The son now, he's consistent. All right? Your might. And with that, I will say, Shalawam, Shalawam. All praises to the Most High, Abba Yah.